Oh, Tommo, risky video this. Probably going to annoy a few people, but never mind. I could have just done a top 10 livery ranking, couldn't I? Which, again, that would have annoyed people as well, to be fair. But this one, I feel I can impart a pretty solid perspective on this, and ultimately, I think it's an important thing to talk about. So here we go. To anyone skeptical, I do implore you to maybe take a 2-meter social distance from the old dislike button until you've heard. I've done my best to look at both sides of the kind of argument, both viewpoints here, and I feel that I've come to a pretty reasonable, pretty justified conclusion. But I guess we'll see, won't we? I've pondered the use of this label towards him for a while now, trying to get my head around what do I actually think on this. So this isn't just coming out on a whim, if you know what I mean. But I ain't going for loads of graphics with this video. This is pretty much just going to be me talking to you. Right, so let's actually define what it means to be a hypocrite first and foremost. And of course, dictionary.com coming up clutch. A person who pretends to have virtues, moral or religious beliefs, principles, etc. that he or she does not actually possess, especially a person whose actions belie stated beliefs. And just to further clarify, virtue means moral excellence or righteousness, and to belie means to be false or to contradict, to do the opposite of what you are claiming to believe or claiming to do. I actually put the question out on Twitter today as I film this, asking people, pretty straightforward question, do you consider Lewis Hamilton to be a hypocrite for his views? And I was actually surprised by how close it was. Good third of you believe that he is. So this isn't just a little outlier, like this is quite a contentious thing. And the more I looked into it, the more I do kind of understand why it is, but also I have my viewpoint that we'll hear towards the end. By far and away, most of the hypocrisy accusations revolve around his promotion of sustainability, saving the planet, hugging the trees, all that good stuff, reducing your carbon footprint. So why exactly does that make him a hypocrite? Well, you've got to understand what being a Formula One driver involves. You're flying around the world all the time, and, you know, air travel is, you know, per kilometre. I've got a bunch of graphs here on screen. Is one of the most environmentally damaging ways of, if not the most environmentally damaging way of travelling around. And he does a lot of travelling. He races an internal combustion engine powered car, and it's not even for necessity. It's not from A to B. It is purely for the sport. Then there's the big one. There's the logistics of taking the whole F1 circus around the world. It's not just the races and the teams and the engineers and all that. It's all the other stuff that comes with it. It's the post-race parties. It's the marshals driving to the circuit. All of that stuff, when you put all of that together, F1 as a sport has a very, very large carbon footprint, undeniably. Along with promoting veganism for his own personal health, he does also promote the sustainability and environmental side of veganism as well. Now, that's a fascinating subject in its own right. I'm super interested in nutrition and all that. I think I probably would have gone down that route if I hadn't done design, if I'm totally honest. I ain't going to spend time discussing my personal views on veganism in this video, but people do call him a hypocrite for promoting the environmental side of it. Sure, Lewis, I think, is undoubtedly making more effort than any other F1 driver to reduce his carbon emissions, not using plastic, carbon offsetting, driving electric cars, etc., etc. Is he still personally contributing more CO2 to the world than your typical person? Undoubtedly, yes. Personally contributing directly to the problem that he claims to want to solve. Do I understand why, from that perspective, people find it hypocritical? Yes, I completely understand, undoubtedly. There does seem to be a direct contradiction there between his message and what he actually does. But, and there it is, there's the but. In this instance, regarding Lewis Hamilton specifically, do I think that's a bad thing? Or even more to the point, do I actually think he's being a hypocrite at all? But Tommo, you've just told me he is a hypocrite. Well, again, if you look at it from that perspective, yes, he is. But that perspective is missing some very, very important points, which, when you take them into account, maybe he's not a hypocrite. Lewis is one of the most high-profile human beings on Earth right now, unquestionably. And with that position comes immense power and immense influence. Whether that's influence over just normal people like me and you, or Mercedes stakeholders, for example, the influence is real. Because again, companies do exist, but ultimately, all a company is just a bunch of individual humans who work together to deliver a product or a service, right? Lewis has a platform to put a message out there that 99.9999999% of human beings never, ever will. And Formula One has been the means for him to gain that platform, right? Question is, do the means justify the ends? Does Lewis's job flying around the world, contributing to CO2 emissions that way, justify the use of his platform to encourage many, many more people than just himself around the world to do something about their lifestyle to make it more sustainable? Now, look, I've heard some extreme fringe, environmentalists saying that all motorsport's bad, all motorsport should be banned, any sport that contributes, to emissions in the world should be. Lewis ain't that. Right? Lewis loves motorsport, obviously, clearly. And Lewis wants to be part of making that change from taking motorsport, which typically isn't very sustainable, environmentally or otherwise, even something like Formula E, it's still a global motorsport with people flying around the world, regardless of whether the cars are electric or not. He wants to be part of that change, though, to move it to a place where motorsport can still exist in 100 years from now, where we will all have to make changes. It's just going to happen. And some things won't exist, some things will. Most things, I think, should still be able to exist in some form, whether it's cars or certain types of food or whatever. But we're going to have to change our perspective on that. Otherwise, if we don't and things don't change, they will die off, right? Lewis wants to help accelerate that change. In 50 years from now, I'll be 77. I'll be in 50 years from now. Wow. Mercedes will probably still exist. We'll probably still be making cars. But Lewis's impact on Mercedes, on the shareholders, on the people who make the decisions now, will have an impact long term. We know road cars are going electric and Mercedes would be doing that anyway, but would they be doing it at the same rate that they are with someone like Lewis pushing them and putting public pressure on them to do so? I don't think they would. And in turn, when a company like Mercedes puts sustainability much more at the heart of its business, other car manufacturers, other businesses around the world are going to take note, and ultimately they're all going to move in the same direction. Let's talk about his clothes stuff. So Lewis has done loads of stuff with Tommy Hilfiger. Now, does clothing contribute to environmental damage? Yes, it produces CO2. It doesn't matter how sustainable you call it, it's still producing emissions. It's still using raw material. The most sustainable way to buy clothes is to just buy used stuff at the end of the day. So in that way, is Lewis, by making new clothes, being hypocritical there? He's adding to global CO2 levels by producing new clothes, and people will be choosing to buy those new clothes instead of buying used ones. But again, perspective, some people will be buying Lewis's Tommy Hilfiger new stuff instead of buying new from another brand that maybe isn't so environmentally conscious. Also, those clothes will inevitably become used over time. They'll probably have good resale value because they're pretty bloody expensive. And then again, there's that kind of immeasurable impact of Lewis pushing for that with Tommy Hilfiger on the wider Tommy Hilfiger brand, as well as all other fashion brands that will inevitably take note. Highlighting the environmental impact of producing clothes in an industry that historically has not cared anywhere near enough, not just about the environment, about workers' rights and lots of other things as well, is going to be a good thing. Lewis's activism will encourage more consumers to care more about this kind of stuff and therefore expect and demand more of that response in terms of give us environmentally sustainable products from the brands. That's the whole point of him being so vocal about it. He wants to encourage more people around the world to live a more sustainable lifestyle. But if he just pisses off to the woods and lives off the land and has zero personal carbon footprint, he's not going to be able to put that message out to the millions and millions of people who are aware of Lewis Hamilton. Whenever Lewis posts about environmentalism, I always see the same comment. If you cared so much, you'd stop flying around the world driving race cars. And again, I completely understand and appreciate where that viewpoint on it comes from. Completely. But as one individual human being, granted one with a lot of influence and power, I don't think he could be doing much more to contribute to trying to make the world a more sustainable place and the people in it more aware of what's going on. Again, I'm not denying for a minute that his personal emissions are almost definitely going to be significantly higher than the average person, but you also have to take into account the effect of his message is immeasurable, but I have zero, not even a shadow of doubt that the difference between his, as one person, his personal emissions versus the impact he's having towards thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world is way higher. No question in my mind that the world is a more sustainable place with Lewis in it than it would be if he wasn't in it and someone else was in that position who didn't give a toss. Credit to Lewis for those people making those changes, because if he wasn't putting the message out, sure, a lot of people would still do it anyway, but a lot of people wouldn't because they wouldn't even be aware of it. And again, it's immeasurable. It's impossible to measure, but I've got zero doubt in my mind that effect, the net outcome, is way bigger. And Lewis knows this. He knows that he gets called a hypocrite for what he says, but he knows that regardless of him being called a hypocrite, he's still having a positive change overall. And you know what? I actually properly respect that. I get it. He's a multi-millionaire and he lives a very, very, very privileged lifestyle now, Lewis Hamilton. Of course he does. He lives in Monaco. He's got all the money in the world, right? And no one likes being told what to do, let alone from someone who's in as well off of a position that he is at the moment, right? Lewis is just a guy at the end of the day, and he wants to promote something that's important to him. And he's got to his position by being incredibly talented at driving a racing car, and he's evolved and changed as a human being, and he's got more aware of certain issues. Listen, his life would be a lot easier if he did what a lot of people tell him to do, which is just shut up and focus on the racing. His life would be a lot less stressful. But he does it anyway because it's important to him. And I respect that. It's like if you go online and you put your opinion out there really strongly, you're going to get a lot more flack. It's a lot easier to just not put your opinion out there. It'd be a lot easier for me to not do this video. But I do genuinely think that looking at this issue, a lot of people are missing something in regards to it. Now, again, maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to know, like, if I still haven't convinced you, okay, that Lewis isn't a hypocrite, then please do let me know in the comments. I'm not perfect. Maybe I'm missing something here. Okay, maybe there's something I've completely overlooked, and I would genuinely love to hear it. I'll make an extra effort with this video to make sure I look at all the comments, because I think this is a really important issue. But please keep it nice in the comments to me, because, you know, I have feelings too. But to everyone as well, because look, at the end of the day, I feel like most of the time, everyone wants to get to the same place. Everyone has the same, you know, goal. It's just sometimes we have different ways of going about it, and that creates more issues than it's worth. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. So thank you for watching. Something a bit different today. I really wanted to talk about this because this has been burning a hole in my head for a while now. So I'm glad I've just put it out there now. And again, if you liked, like the video. If you didn't, dislike, feel free. My name's been Tommo. This is the Tommo F1 YouTube channel. Thanks again, as ever, for watching. Have a good one. Ta-da. But that perspective is missing some very, very important considerations and points, which when... Minton, can you please shut up?